Okay.
Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I'm delighted to have Dr. Angela Catalissa leading this series on polymathy. So Angela, take it away.
Thank you, Shrikant. So yes, like Shrikant said, my name is Dr. Angela Catalissa, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the lived experiences of modern day polymaths. And you may be wondering, well, what is a polymath? Hopefully, if you're here, you know what it is, but just in case you don't, a definition I like to use that has been proposed by who I think is the forefather of polymathy studies, Robert Root Bernstein and his wife, Michelle. They have said that polymathy is, quote, active engagement, active being the key, in multiple interests or endeavors, integrating vocations with avocations, so work with hobbies, simultaneously or serially across the lifespan. So that's their definition. Basically, it's a Renaissance person. It's someone who's very curious and very broad in their approach to work and life, and not a narrow specialist, even though we live in an age of specialization. So today, this is talk number 2 out of 10 on Polymath Sundays. And we're going to be looking specifically at the pros and cons of navigating a polymathic life in that age of specialization. So polymaths are kind of rogue adventurers in a way, given the context in which they live right now in modern day. We're going to talk about the unique social and emotional challenges of that life and that way of living. So that's the topic for today. I do want to say before we dive in, and I'll probably say this at all 10 talks on polymathy, is that it exists on a spectrum. Okay, it's not like you have to be a Leonardo da Vinci to consider yourself a polymathic person. There's a range and a spectrum of like less polymathic or more polymathic, and of course there's a level of breadth, and also integration, like how well are you integrating knowledge and experiences from different disciplines. So I just want to say that it's not either or, it's not black and white, it's not yes or no, it exists on a spectrum. Now, I want to introduce you to 2 special guests that we have with us today. The first is Saskia Smet. She is a coach for polymaths, a professional coach located near Antwerp in Belgium. Saskia, could you say a little bit more about yourself and your background, anything that you would like to say so people understand who you are?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Saskia. I'm a coach, but I have had some other lives before that. It's not my first and only profession. At the moment, it's the only thing I do. But I have been a quality manager. I've been working in IT. I've been working in pharmaceutical industry. So I have a broad range of things. What I do is I coach, advise, and counsel sometimes. What we call in Dutch beelddenkers. And apparently that is something which is only used, or word which is only used in the northern part of Belgium and in the Netherlands. You could translate it to visual spatial thinking for visual spatial persons. And then you can have a look to the work of Linda Kreger-Silverman. It is not completely identical to polymathic, but it's close behind. And I think that it was also in your previous talk set that there are a lot of people with similar profiles, which are definitely called a little bit different, but that you could better gather all the knowledge together, because there's a lot of overlap, like we say in Dutch. What I do is I coach them on a personal level, but I also coach them or advise them on a business level or on a team level. Not the team, but the most of the time they are the leaders.
All right, thank you for that. Oh, did you want to say something else, Saskia?
No, maybe just the thing. I'm a single mother with 3 children, which are now in their 20s. And they told me a lot, because 2 of them are really polymathics with all the problems they had.
Got it. Thank you, Saskia. All right, our second special guest for today is a real life polymath living in El Paso, Texas. He is a member of the Polymath's Place Facebook group, and his name is Gianni Griffin. Gianni, could you say a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are, anything you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm Gianni. Right now, most of my life, I've been focusing and kind of specializing right now with computers and technology. But I've been a stand-up comedian. I wrote and produced music, and I still want to do a little bit more of that. I write books. I have like 4 or 5 books I'm writing. I want to get into politics. I want to learn 5 languages. I want to learn some instruments. I have a whole bunch of things that's planned out, like, and it's gonna happen and stuff like that. Selling, oh, that's gonna be a big thing I'm gonna learn to do. I'm just saying, yeah. So I just like doing a whole bunch of things and learning a whole bunch of stuff. And also, oh, chef, that's gonna be a restaurant. I'm gonna open a restaurant eventually, whatever, eventually. But but yeah, I like a lot of different things, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gianni, for that. All right, so let's dive in next to the real social and emotional realities of living life like Saskia or Gianni or Saskia's clients, where you are not a neuro specialist and you have a broad array of skills and expertise across disciplines. Because we live in an age of specialization, living life in those ways is not so easy. The dominant ideology says if you want to be successful, if you want to be professional, then pick one thing and dedicate your entire professional life and experience in that one area. But some people opt not to take that path, whether it's a conscious choice to choose variety and breadth in addition to depth, or it's just sort of the way your life plays out due to a variety of factors. Some people end up becoming polymathic. And so just to start off, if you're someone like, say, Gianni, and you meet someone new and they say, hi, nice to meet me. Nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. If you start with what Gianni just shared about himself, it might be difficult for people to absorb that. I mean, of course, this is a safe setting. This is what we expect people to be talking about here. But part of the reality, and I learned this through my research interviewing modern day polymaths, is that telling the story of who you are and being honest about it creates tension, or it's a risk, because you may be seen as bragging, you may be seen as lying or exaggerating. And so a lot of times polymaths actually self-censor what they say about themselves and their background, or maybe even downplay their capabilities because they don't want to intimidate people or make things socially awkward somehow. So they hold back. Saskia and Gianni, I want to ask you, does that resonate with you? Like when someone says to you, so tell me about yourself, what's going through your mind in terms of what to share?
For me, it's resonating absolutely. Even if I'm, for example, on a network event, it's really hard to say what should I tell because people don't understand it. It's too complex, and also in sessions you start with one topic and there's a lot which is coming on. It's not straightforward. It can change in a minute. It can change anywhere. So no, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know, like over the years, I would say I've kind of trained my like self to like, give a very specific kind of answer so that people are less like taken aback by like some of the stuff I might say. Cause I mean, like, yeah, if I start dumping, like you said, if I start dumping all that on somebody, or if I even just start getting into like something I'm really interested in, like philosophy or something, it often is off-putting to some people and stuff, and it's like, oh, well, chill, like that kind of attitude. But yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so like I always have to. I kind of almost have grown to just kind of that accept that as like a way of like life and stuff, that there will only be a certain amount of like my self and my identity that I'll be able to share with most people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the reality is we may have multiple identities that shift over time, or we may have multiple identities we're holding at the same time. And normally when we talk about identity, we don't think about it that way, but it's true, especially for polymathic people. And so on the flip side of this sort of feeling like you may have to hold back and censor so you don't overwhelm people or somehow create tension, is this perk of okay, I have all these tools in my toolkit. I have all these experiences. It makes it easy to find common ground, right? It makes it easier to find something to connect with. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Go ahead, Jenny.
Absolutely. Like that's why I almost meet people and it's almost like sometimes it's, I don't know, maybe I'm a little, I would say, bored or jaded about the simple fact that I know I'll meet them. And of course we'll have something in common because I'm into so much things, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yep.
of course you're gonna think I'm great about this or that because of course, because that's what I've taken time to like understand and learn and stuff. So I mean, at the same time, I'm kind of like I say, like yeah, of course, kind of thing. But at the same time, it's harder to like know that I'm a form a genuine connection. I still form genuine connections with people, even if it's just over those like simple things that we have in common and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, another thing I found related to what we're talking about that I found from the people I interviewed is that because they have all this background, all these experiences, um, they frequently feel like they can understand people because that they've lived and tried and dabbled and or experienced or gone in depth in all these different areas. So I can understand you pretty good because I've tried what you're into and we can sort of be in the same in group in a way. But then when it comes to the flip side, which is, okay, I understand you. Do you understand me? Polymaths feel like it's very difficult for people to understand them. It's a kind of a burden of being a polymath is I can learn so well. I can understand other people's minds and how they work. I can find common ground with people, but I don't feel understood. Gianni or Saskia, do you have any comments on that?
Absolutely. One of the things a lot of my clients, and sometimes I have it myself also, is that you have an image or an idea in your head. Sometimes it's in three dimensions, sometimes it's in 4 dimensions. And it's pretty hard to get it out on a comprehensive way that people understand what you're talking about. That, or they say, well, it's too complex, you make it too big, it's just that small problem, but we see the whole picture. If we have to solve a problem, we are not going to solve that little tiny piece. We take the whole, which is in front of it, beyond, on top, the whole. And that makes it difficult if you don't know that there is a difference in point of view. And I don't say that it's better or worse. It's just a difference. You see all the details, everything in one picture, and other people are looking at that tiny small part. Mm-hmm. That's okay if that's their way of working, but it's a different viewpoint, and you're talking about different things. Yeah. And so they don't understand you. That's certainly one point. And another point I often see is that because you have so many interests, and like Jenny also said, you are so eager to learn something new that you really dive into it. You go pretty deep, but your speed of learning is so fast that people are getting afraid. That people are really saying, what's going on? You come in like somebody who doesn't know anything about that topic, and a few hours or a few days later, you are going out and you are having the same knowledge as I have. And I studied a long time on that. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty, if you're aware that that can happen, you can, don't hide or shy or turn yourself down, but you know that reaction can come, and you can try to make the connection that they are not getting afraid of you, because you don't want, it's just your interest and your energy to learn and to dive deep in. It's not that you want to overwhelm them or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yes.
Yeah. Gianni, what about you? Do you feel like people understand you well, or do you feel like pretty misunderstood or not very well understood by other people?
Absolutely misunderstood. But I think, again, like I say, this is just something I kind of learned to adapt to this kind of world and living in that kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And, I find ways in moments and times where, I can express myself and I can get certain parts and aspects of my mind, out and stuff. It's part of the reason I even wrote books in the first place was because, it's just too much to start dumping on the people sometimes. So, and I find those moments. So, it's like I think to a certain degree, like I said, we were having this kind of had a discussion along the same line in the group where, I say, everybody to a certain degree, I think has to feel that way to some degree. There's always every human on the planet must feel like some part of them misunderstood and not known.
Yeah.
But I think it's specifically for polymaths, it's a lot more intense of a feeling. And that's why I just say like, but I think at the end of the day, we all kind of still relate to this whole like aspect of just being like humans and this human experience that we all are kind of undertaking as living on this planet and everything else between. So I kind of try to just focus more on that and to a certain degree accept the fact that I won't be understood all the time.
Yeah. You know what I find so interesting too is that this is something I heard from people I interviewed is that for most people, when they want to be understood, they share more. They share more information. They go in more depth. But for polymaths, if they want to feel like understood, they kind of share less. It's so weird. But if it feels like too much maybe to share all the variety and facets of their identity, so they hold back in order to have some semblance of being understood, which I think is fascinating. Also related to this is because they don't really fit in, because they're so singular, so unique, because they express their real onlyness in an authentic way, it's very hard to find a sense of community. It's really a singular journey that can feel very alone. So it requires a level of bravery. This is part of why I'm bringing this up in a topic, since we're talking about the social and emotional realities of living life in a polymathic way, is it can feel very alone. And I want to give a plug for a moment, real quick, forgive me. But when I realized that this is the case, that there are all these capable, competent, wonderful people living life to the fullest in an authentic way in all their variety and facets, but they feel alone, it made me feel like, well, what can we do about that? And my solution was to create a Facebook group. So I have a Facebook group. I just want to let you all know that if you feel like, oh, I think I'm polymathic, come join Polymath's Place. I know some of the people here are already members of that group, but there is a place where we talk about polymathy openly. And it's not as if you're going to find your exact twin, like your exact combination of your polymathic self in the group, because that may be nearly impossible. You're so unique, right? But you will find people who understand what it's like to live life as a polymath there. I also want to mention there's a YouTube channel called Polymath's Place as well that I started. So there are resources out there. Okay, so in terms of feeling like it's kind of a singular journey requiring bravery to face those challenges, I'm curious, Saskia or Gianni, do you have any comments about that?
For me, it's important, and I observe that also a lot, if your self-esteem is, or I think you say, or self-esteem, that trust, that you have a lot of confidence in yourself. If that is great and strong, and I don't want to say that you have to feel yourself better than somebody else. That is not the case. It's just that you are confident with who you are and which kind of knowledge you have. If that is okay, if that is good in yourself, and you can build trust and respect with the people on your workspace or in your environment or whatever you connect with people, that makes a lot of a difference. Because if you are respected and trusted in both sides, both directions, so you trust the others and they trust you, they are not so, or people are not focusing on the differences and the speciality anymore. And I think at that moment, you can share your talents and combine them with the talents of some others, because I think we have to admit that as well. We have some brilliant talents, but we also have some things where we really awful are in. For me, it's administration and everything what's going behind that. And there are other people who are very good in that. But if we share and combine our knowledge, we can help each other and we can grow together. So that is for me one of the things that I find is the most important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Saskia. Gianni, do you have any comments about sort of feeling like it's a singular journey and, you know, it can feel kind of alone, like you don't necessarily have a sense of community, or maybe you want to share, since you're a recent member of Polymath's Place, like how does it feel to sort of have this online community that you can be a part of now?
Well, I wouldn't, you know, the bravery and the singularity. I mean, I feel like a lot of things when I was talking about acceptance and stuff
Mm-hmm.
helps to overcome that. You know, you accept the fact that this is the way it is. You know, this is the world. This is how it is. I think it helps to kind of overcome that. Another thing I like to do too, whenever I meet people, I don't care what it is specifically about that person. I always feel like I listen to their story. I listen to them and I learn something from them. So that way I'm like always engaging like my own interest in the whole situation with them. And you know, people love to talk about themselves. So if you ask them a million questions, you know, they'll give, I mean, for the most part, sometimes they won't tell everything, but you know, they love to talk about themselves. So it's always interesting for me to always kind of engage in learning about the person and kind of taking in all those facts and everything else, and then kind of understanding who that person is and who they become, how they became that person, who they are. So I think, yeah, like I said, for the most part, it's just a kind of a kind of acceptance and then utilization of the situation and the way it is. So it's not so scary, I would say. You know what I mean? So it's just, and that was something to kind of embrace and revel in and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
That's a,
can I just add something? I think the Polymath tribe or the other groups which are online available are good as an addition, because sometimes we need to ping pong ideas or challenge some of our thoughts on a pretty fast level. And that is, I think, therefore you need other polymaths who don't care that you ask silly questions or strange combinations of questions or whatever, but that you can just start some ping ponging with thoughts and ideas. And that's where those groups are good for. That is what I hear from my own clients as well, that they need that interaction. They can well integrate in normal day, but sometimes you need that interaction just to free it all up and to start a way of thinking on that high-speed level without having to be limited or whatever, in whatever sense.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For sure, polymaths, I mean, one of the things I heard from the people I interviewed was that it was really refreshing, actually, to be able to have either professional relationships or friendships with other people who are polymathic. It was sort of like, I can let down my guard a little bit. I can be more authentic because these people understand what it's like. At the same time that engaging with other polymaths was refreshing, there's also something to be said for polymathic people engaging with narrow specialists. One of my participants said that the polymath can be like a parasite of the expert. The parasite of the expert is what he said. And it's true. Like, you can really learn from narrow specialists, and you can learn from, I mean, you can learn from anybody. So I just want to put that out there, that, you know, polymaths may feel like it's hard to find a sense of place, but going out and engaging with people, whether or not they're like yourself or not, there's something still valuable in that. One of the things too I want to mention in terms of the like kind of a positive of being polymathic is that it can actually, especially if you're like outgoing, if you really enjoy having a rich social life, is it may mean that your friend group is actually quite broad and diverse. And so it can help you learn about more. It can promote your polymathy even more because you're open to different types of people. You can learn from those variety of people then and enrich your own polymathic understanding even more. And by the way, Saskia and Gianni, I'm gonna keep sharing some of these sort of facets, facts of social and emotional realities of polymaths. But if you have something, I'll periodically stop and invite you. But if you have something to add, please just jump in, okay?
Okay.
What else can I tell you? Another kind of like fun fact, there wasn't complete agreement from the polymaths I interviewed, but some of them felt like, okay, yes, I hold back because I don't want to shock or overwhelm people. I don't want them to think I'm bragging or lying or exaggerating. Sometimes a polymath would feel like it's fun. It's fun to be like, oh yeah, I build houses and fix cars and did stand-up comedy and I'm an IT guy and all the things that Gianni does. It can sometimes be fun to just drop those little gems and see how people respond, Gianni or Saskia, do you have any comments on that? The sort of fun playfulness of shocking people with all your unique variety?
Well, sometimes you can surprise people by saying, I don't know nothing about, for example, ICT. And then they ask me a question and my answer, then they are afraid and say, well, this is pretty expert information that you have there, but that is, you combine everything and you learn, and if you see somebody do, you pick it up. And then it's sometimes tricky to see that people underestimate you, even on general topics, that they think, well, that is something you don't know and that you just can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it depends also. In some situations, I will make a fun of that just to see how they react, or if people say, well, you can't do that. But in most times, well, it's yes, you surprise them often by your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's true. It's not that you want to brag, but you surprise them, but with the depth and the knowledge you sometimes have. If, I think that's most important, if it is something you are interested in, because you can't learn something you're not interested in.
Gianni, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it can be kind of fun and kind of, it used to be a lot more fun for me before, but till you start realizing people think you're kind of arrogant and full of yourself and stuff like that. Those kind of people started thinking that kind of thing to kind of shock them with all of the different things. But now for me it's just more of a, if I shock them when I start showing the skill or working on something or doing something, then it's like, I'm like, fine, it's no big deal, whatever. Why are you tripping? Why are you making such a big deal about this? Yeah, it's kind of fun to do it then. But I tell you what, it's a lot less fun on dates to do it, because they get really freaked out about it. So I'm just saying.
And that's another great point, Gianni, is that if you're single, and I know Karen, you made a comment about this a minute ago. If you're single and you're trying to date as a polymathic person, that can be difficult to find someone who can first sort of understand you in this combination of facets that you are, but also who can sort of go with the flow as your identity morphs and changes over time, which it may. And so I heard from a number of people I interviewed that like, it's not so easy to date when you're a polymathic person. And Gianni, you just touched upon that. It's like, I may have to censor myself even extra, to even sort of get to know someone and give out my identity in little bits, in bite-sized bits, so that I can try to be understood without intimidating or scaring this person away. So that's another kind of social emotional reality, is if you're like this, it may be difficult to find a partner that is a good fit for you.
Oh yeah, especially when you're sitting there and it's like, oh, look at us, we have so much in common. You know what I mean? To them, to you, it may seem like, oh yeah, that's great. You know what I mean? But to them, that's like, wait, are you just like making this up to like, seem cool? Is it too much? Is it all the rest of this? But it's like, no, I'm just giving you peace, and it happened to line up a little bit with theirs, and I don't know. I've seen them be off put by that very much.
Yeah, I hear you.
Would it also be in combination with the way that we for most of us, often change plans last minute and change directions completely 100 degrees if necessary, and it can be unpredicted. And that for some people, this is really, well, you have to be used to that everything can change, and that there are a lot of changes in interests and in life and in things you're going to do with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good point, Saskia. Another thing I want to bring up is, I've mentioned we live in this age of specialization, and so to be polymathic in that context can be a challenge. And part of what the challenge can be is pressure, expectations from society, from employers, from parents, from spouses, from people you're dating, to somehow sort of fit in a box, like get a little neater, get a little tidier, and get in the box. And polymaths are usually like, no, I refuse, I won't get in that little box. But I just want to say something is that we don't exist in isolation. We are all embedded in a larger context. We are in organizational cultures, we are in national cultures and regional cultures, racial cultures. And we're also in myriad relationships. And so part of what can happen for polymaths is either their polymathy can be encouraged or discouraged because of the social context in which you may find yourself in. That can happen. I want to share, for example, one of the people I interviewed was a highly, highly capable, intelligent math whiz. She had been really good at mathematics and music, by the way. She was a whiz at both of them her whole life. And she majored in math in college. And she got a B on one of her tests. And she was such a perfectionist that getting a B to her meant she was a failure. I know that may sound ridiculous, but she was used to getting only A's and only being the best. And so when she got a B on a test, she went to her academic advisor and asked to change majors. And the advisor asked why. And she explained why. And he was like, no, that's not enough of a reason to drop your math major because you got a B one time. So in that case, the academic advisor helped her stick with her passion for math. And she also had, the passion for music and entrepreneurship and a bunch of other things. But I'm sharing this example to say that we exist in social relationships, and people impact us to either not give up on something or change direction. I want to share one other quick example. Someone else I interviewed was thinking about double majoring in undergrad. I think she was going to do engineering and art. And the academic advisor basically told her, no, don't double major. And you're female, go with art. And she listened. She didn't double major and she didn't pick engineering. And so I just want to point this out that, you have to be cognizant if you're living life as a polymath, you have to be cognizant of how people in your atmosphere may influence you. And of course, it's important to hear people's perspectives. And like, if you want advice or observations, yeah, be open to that. But at the end of the day, you have to curate your own life experience. And if being polymathic is important to you, keep that in mind as you choose how you want to live your life. Saskia or Gianni, do you have any comments on, the social pressures and expectations and how that impacts how polymathy plays out in your life?
One thing I've observed in several occasions is that the combination you talked about, the lady with a major, the double major in art and in engineering, what I realize is that, or what I observe is that a lot of them have an expertise or an interest or a job in science or engineering or whatever, which is really like the STEM, how do you call it, the STEM disciplines. But on the other hand, they need to balance that with something else, with cooking, with gardening, with something with their hands, with music, with art. And people are often told you have to choose one of them, but I know and I observe that if you choose one of them, they're unbalanced and they getting in trouble because it's unbalanced. What I realize is that you combine those two whether it is a hobby or whether it is on both on high level, that you can balance them together if that is needed for you, that you achieve better results, that you achieve much more, and that you are in balance. And although people say it's too much for an outsider, for yourself, you need to have that to keep your balance. And that is strange because people are saying it's one or them. No, you need them both because you're otherwise unbalanced.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard that from people I interviewed, that like if they set aside part of themselves for too long, it began to feel like something is out of balance, something is missing, and I need to fix it because I don't feel right for like excluding that part of my identity for too long. Gianni, I see you nodding over there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, absolutely. I felt that before. Just setting aside something for too long, absolutely. I'll start to feel like I'm suffocating.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I never really felt too much like social or societal pressure. But I have heard people say like, that sounds like a lot. That sounds like too much. Or, that's really ambitious when I tell them about like some of the stuff I want to do. And it's just like, but like life is long. I take 5 years here, I take 10 years here, I do things here and there. And then I don't see the big deal, but for them it seems overwhelming, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
May I add something to that again also?
Yeah.
What you also see is that if they have a job, which can be pretty complicated to learn, like for example, think on in the laboratory some pretty stuff to analyze and some interesting, they learn so fast, and if they know the job and the excitement is gone, so there's nothing new and it becomes routine, then they are bored. And what you often hear then is that people in the organization say, well, stay here for a few more years because you can have it a little bit ease and a little bit calmer, and they are gone if you don't realize that they need some new stuff, some new challenges, some new experiences. If you know it and if the knowledge is in your fingertips, then most of us will go on and will move on. And if your organization is not letting you do that, well, I hope that the most at the end, they decide to quit themselves. And I think it's a pity, but it's so often the only thing you can do. You really have to move on. You really have to have a new challenge.
Yeah, that new challenge, the variety and continual learning. I mean, polymath, it literally means, I didn't say this earlier, but poly means many, and math, it's not mathematics, it's manthenin in Greek, which means to learn. So it basically means many learning. So if a polymath is not learning, not growing, not improving, it feels very uncomfortable. So I just want to say that. Another thing I want to add is that to a polymath, actually, Karen said, I'm so relieved to find I'm actually normal. You are, Karen. In my opinion, this is actually the natural way of being, to learn, to explore, to grow. I mean, we have this amazing brain that makes us so unique from any other creature on the planet. Of course, we want to learn and grow as much as we can. It's natural. The Industrial Revolution, the increase in knowledge in humanity, we decided to kind of create intellectual division of labor to make ourselves cogs and big wheels. And in my opinion, that was what was unnatural, but maybe we needed to do it. It was functional and it made sense. It was efficient. But for people in this age of specialization who choose not to be specialists, other people may see them. Here's some of the again, difficult social and emotional realities, is that other people who buy into the narrative of specialization may see you as flighty, uncommitted, distracted, unfocused. And so part of the reality of living this natural way in a harsh environment, the age of specialization, is feeling like you have to defend your choices, or feeling like I'm going to try not to care what other people think of me, even though it kind of is impacting me, what they think of me. So that's part of the reality as well, is feeling like I have to defend the way I live my life, the way I learn, the way that feels so natural to me, and trying not to care what other people think, but then they do. Eric, I saw you raising your hand. Did you want to make a comment? You can go ahead and come off mute. There you go.
So like,
I mean, they see it that way because that's usually what it is, right? Like most people who sound like that because they are kind of flighty and never get good at anything. So like it's not a terrible assumption. The question is just how you overcome that.
Yeah. And I
But
would
like
say, go
they're
ahead.
not crazy to think that.
Well, I also want to say what you're saying there, because I know what you mean. Where there's people who, they are flight. They're in the one thing, they're in the other, all the time. But I think for most, I guess maybe just me, I would say actually is I would sit here and I would not say that I'm flighty, but I'm just very passionate about all these things, And I think that is very much the key in those situations. Some people who are flighty and they are like, they choosing 16 different jobs to go do any other day, they're doing it because, it's just an idea maybe that popped into their head. Maybe they got distracted, maybe something like that. You know what I mean? But for me, if I'm choosing to learn something or do something, it's out of passion. It's not out of just, maybe this is cool. You know what I mean? Or maybe I should say sincere interest, I would say, to enhance or to understand and to learn.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely, I agree with Jenny. If you lose interest or if you have the impression that you know enough about one subject or one job, you move on.
Yeah. I love what you said, Gianni, about passion. I find that's true as well, that polymaths are the way I kind of describe them is the people that tend to be kind of all in at life. They're just all in. They're passionate about the human experience. They want to learn and grow, have the full breadth of the human experience. That's why variety is so key. All right, related to what we're talking about with all this variety, I want to talk for a moment about another thing that came up in my interviews, which is your personal brand and how difficult it can be to explain in any social setting, like who you are and to kind of manage your personal brand. And interestingly, some people chose to lean in to that sort of the large swath of different parts of their identity by playing it up, by really owning their polymathy and letting that be an asset, by in any given context playing up their differentness versus blending in. And so I just want to mention that the personal brand, though, that's more largely what I'm trying to bring up here, is that your resume, if you have a website, your website and like who you are can be difficult to kind of explain. The storytelling behind your personal brand is a challenge you have to navigate in social settings. I see people nodding. Gianni, Saskia, anyone else, any comments on that?
If you have to look for a new job and then you have a hard time, if you have to use a standard or classical resume, it makes more sense for a polymath, I think, to really see what the red line is between the connection between all your knowledge, interests, passions, experience, and see what brings that to the table. It's more easy if you put it that way. And if people pick you up because they are interested in the combination, then that you are able to fit in a classical job vacancy, which is posted everywhere. I hear from my clients that it's difficult to get asked for an interview if the first selections is on the base on the basis of the resumes from candidates.
Mm-hmm. I see, by the way, Angelia just put in the comments, a website, ? How about a few? So yeah, that Absolutely. Is very polymathic, yes. That you would actually have multiple websites as part of your personal brand. But I like what you said, Saskia, like if there's a way to kind of find a through line, maybe the through line is just, I like to explore and learn. And so that's what you're going to see with my personal brand because I'm a polymath. Maybe that's what it is. All right, next I want to mention something. This is a little academic of me, but I do want to mention a theory from the academic literature called social identity theory. And what social identity theory says is that we human beings figure out who we are we figure out our identity because we can find in groups that we can be a part of. We can fit in an in group, or we can see out groups where we don't fit in. And so by that social comparison that we do, we figure out who we are. Something that I found that was so interesting. It's hard. I want to mention it's hard for most people to realize they're polymathic because one, we don't talk about it. Most people don't know the word. Polymath is not the best word. I think it's the best word available. But it's something we talk about in this sort of community is like, what's the right word? I use polymath, but it's not the best word. Most people don't know about it. We really don't have societal discourse around this. And so even realizing I'm a polymath is like, it may take people half a lifetime to even get there. And so it can be very difficult to step in and own that identity. But when people do realize they're polymathic, what's so interesting is that usually it's because they can't really find a group where they really fit in. They never really fit in. And social identity theory says, oh no, that you're supposed to find your identity because you fit in somewhere, or you can find places where you really feel comfortable fitting in. For polymaths, it's the opposite. They don't really fit in, and that's how they realize they're different. That's how they realize they're a polymath. So I want to mention that I just think that's an interesting difference, and also sort of a burden of being a polymath, is because it may be hard to even have that self-awareness. Saskia or Gianni, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, it really depends. I think for some people it's it starts already in childhood. I think how you are stimulated, motivated, or just not to do your natural, or to be your natural self, or to fit in. I think there is something where it starts already.
I want to comment as well. Someone said in the chat that they fit in everywhere, which is true. Like a polymath
Yes.
usually does feel like I can fit in anywhere a little bit, but really feeling like you fit in entirely, like you found your tribe, is very difficult. You can find communities where you fit in part. You can find many communities where you can fit in part, but to find where you really fit in is challenging. And that, again, that's why I made the group Polymath Place. It's a virtual place, but I know what a lonely journey it can be. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, is I feel like I fit in everywhere, in a little bit here, a little bit there, all over the place. And I mean, like, I don't know, like I said, I go back to just learning to kind of accept it. Now, maybe I will, maybe now that I've found all the polymath people and stuff, because like I said, I didn't really seek that out before in life or anything. I've heard about it, but maybe now I'll find some more of that kinship where on all of these different levels. But I mean, like I said, I don't know. It's kind of just been something I would say, yeah, I've adapted to.
Yeah, I hear you. A couple other quick things I want to mention before we shift into some Q&A is it can be kind of frustrating for polymaths as well, because usually polymaths are gifted, talented, highly intelligent people who are good at learning. Like that's the nature of what being a polymath is that you're good at learning. So you probably are above average in terms of intelligence and capability and experiences. And so when you meet someone who's more narrow-minded or has chosen kind of literal blinders on so they can be a specialist, it can be challenging to kind of engage with them when you feel like they're only seeing a part of the picture, not they're looking down so narrowly that they don't see the bigger picture. So it can be frustrating socially. I also want to say, for some polymaths, not all polymaths are like this, but for some, their own polymathy may actually be a trauma response. And I haven't really said it like that much in the past, but it's true. For some people who grow up in a dysfunctional home with dysfunctional parents, the way to get out of a bad situation, I have said this before, the way to get out of a bad situation is to gain skills, to get a toolkit so that you can get a way out. So developing one's polymathy can actually be a trauma response. The other thing I've observed from some of the people I interviewed is that because part of what polymathy may be is success, accomplishment in a bunch of different areas, that for some people doing that was also a trauma response to, say, bullying. There was one of the guys I interviewed in my dissertation who was bullied, and him being really awesome in multiple fields was kind of a, watch me, you hurt me, watch how awesome I am, I'm going to be better than you. And so I do want to mention that. So for many people, they're polymaths because they're curious and they like learning and it's just fun and they want to explore. For some percentage, I don't know what percentage, but for some segment of polymaths, it may actually be a trauma response. So I want to put that out there. What else can I tell you regarding the emotions of polymathy? So one of the people I interviewed, he shared, there were several, by the way, several people I interviewed who told me that they struggled with depression. So being a polymath doesn't mean your life's so wonderful you don't have, you don't struggle with, you know, with depression or mental illness. In fact, being a polymath can have burdens and challenges because we're in this age of specialization, and just because of the nature of what it means to be a polymath, there are pros and cons, like any, you know, way of living your life. But one of the people I interviewed, he told me that it was his polymathy, his continual learning, that helped to alleviate his depression. He realized, he had this epiphany that learning makes him happy. And so, of course, it feels good to feel like you're learning, you're improving, you're becoming a better person. So polymathy can both create challenges in your life, because it's not so easy always to be a polymath, at the same time that your polymath exploration can relieve some of the darkness that may creep into one's mind, because it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like you're learning. It makes you feel like you're becoming a better version of yourself. Gianni, I see you over there nodding. Do you have any comments you'd like to share?
I was just saying absolutely to that, because you know, like even just like I'll say this, because you know my upbringing wasn't exactly ideal, and it left with a lot of problems, I will say, you know. But absolutely, I learned just the aspect of learning other things. I learned how to help myself out of my own situation, to the point that like now I feel, you know, I conquered all those problems. I've overcame them all because I was able to, okay, go find the solution, go answer the question. What is the problem? Get to the heart of things, and kind of apply kind of like how I did every other problem in my life, you know, any problem, even when I had a math problem, you know, or whatever else, I kind of apply the same kind of uh, uh, I guess, like I say, you know, attitude towards it that helped me to actually find and understand the solution. So then I started, you know, kind of getting into the humanities and understanding that kind of stuff to kind of apply towards those things. I mean, absolutely, I agree with that. It helped me out of my own situation.
Yeah. Something else I heard from people I interviewed as well is that the actual act of learning, and a lot of polymaths would read from a young age. They're just, polymaths tend to be people who read. Not all of them, but you know, a lot of them, that's how they learn, is through reading. And so just reading could be a great mental distraction from maybe a difficult home life or a difficult or stressful reality. So, you know, you see the link. It's not as if polymathy is just some intellectual pursuit. There are emotional realities and how they intersect. You know, like my polymathy may be the antidote to my depression, for example. So I just want to point that out. Another thing, and we're wrapping up here, and we're going to switch to Q&A soon. But at the end of the day, you know, polymathy can feel like a lonely journey. You may feel alone. You may feel misunderstood. You may feel like you have to defend your choices because of the pressures and expectations and comments that people make. So it's not necessarily an easy journey. I would say it's a worthwhile journey. To me, living life in a polymathic way is how you live a good life. And it's so important. Gianni, by the way, I want to mention before we shift to Q&A, you brought up something in the Polymath Place Facebook group recently about authenticity. Can we talk for a moment about authenticity? For me, as someone with polymathic tendencies, I'm curious, I like to learn, I want to have the full human experience in all its variety. It would feel very inauthentic for me to force myself into a cage of specialization. By the way, cage of specialization, I say that purposefully. So let's talk about the importance of living life authentically and expressing your authentic self. Personally, I feel like that's one of the most important things we're here on earth to do, is to express our authentic self. So Gianni, what comes up for you when we talk about authenticity?
I mean, it was a lot of what we kind of already touched on, you know, being able to share your actual self and who you are, you know, that. But it was also the aspect of the authenticity of other people will, I guess, assign to you and give to you because, you know, they think, you know, like you say, maybe lying or exaggerating or coming up with stuff that's not even, you know, yeah. You know, you say you did all of this, say you know all of this stuff, but do you really? Like, are you just trying to seem cool and impress somebody or something? You know, it's the authenticity of those things. And I mean, that's why I say like it's such a broad thing, but I think it spans on like a bunch of different aspects of just like what it is to be um, yourself, like you said, and be you in the world and stuff. When it's kind of a struggle to understand just how authentic you can be and who you and everything else. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Saskia, did you want to add something?
Absolutely, I absolutely agree that finding your authentic self and see how you can be part and contribute is really important as a person. And authenticity is in that key for me, because what Gianni also said, that is, it demonstrates to people without bragging that you are not bragging, but yet that you have a deep knowledge. And most of us are really willing to help and to contribute, so that you really want to bring some part to the table and help people with what you can. And then the authenticity helps people to trust that you are maybe a little bit strange on some points for them, if they are really from one expertise and a single expertise. But on the other hand, that you can be a bridge builder between experts, and that you have brilliant talents to combine with their talents.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of being a bridge builder and also a synthesizer.
Yes.
At the intersection of disciplines as well. I just want to say regarding authenticity, and then we'll move along, but it's so important. We don't know if we get another life, right? So it would be such a waste to have this human experience and then just live it pretending to be someone you're not, or live it pretending to fit in someone else's box, or living up to their expectations. I want to encourage anybody listening to this to embrace their onlyness, embrace your uniqueness, embrace who you are. If you think about it, what did it take for you to get here in all the cosmos and all the planets and all the ancestors and all their experiences and all the things that had to survive and happen for you to get here? It will never happen again. Just like you will never happen again. With your DNA at this time, with these experiences, you are a unique creature, and embrace that. It's precious that you exist the way you do, and let your light shine. Okay, so there's my little pep talk. I want to say too, someone asked about my dissertation. It is available for free digitally if you Google "In Pursuit of Polymaths," or you can Google my name, Angela Cotalessa. It's available for free digitally on ResearchGate. You can also find it in hard copy on Amazon. I think right now it's only shipping to the United States. I have to figure out how to fix that, but it is available as a book if you'd like it as well. Okay, so we've been talking for an hour already. Wow, that went by quickly. I want to switch now to some Q&A. So let's open up the discussion. Like, what do people in the audience think? What's come up for you? What questions or comments do you guys have?
Wonderful. That was amazing, Angela, Saskia, and Gianni. That was just fantastic. So, folks, it's time for Q&A. We have 4 rules, as always. Number 1, type an exclamation mark in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom in order to speak. Number 2, keep on topic. Number 3, be brief. Number 4, speak your mind. Feel free to disagree with anybody on anything and do so courteously. All right, so first question is from Michael Cilion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was interested. For my part of this is I'm very interested in what gets us into flow and what happens when you seek out flow states in learning or various kinds of extreme things like raving or extreme sports, and also like low-key flow states when you can just spend hours in flow reading a book or just go rabbit holing on Wikipedia and YouTube, things like I do often. So what is like the flow state side of being a polymath, seeking out and always seeking these flow states?
Yeah, that's an area I hadn't really thought a whole lot about before. Michael, good to see you, by the way. But I think for polymaths who are very passionate and excitable by ideas, I would think that maybe polymathic people have an easier chance of getting into that flow state, maybe because they're excitable, because they're passionate, because they like ideas. I don't know. Does that resonate with you guys? Do you think that fits? Yeah, I see Alice did the little clapping emoticon there. Martin says, yes, Angela. Yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Next question is from Angelia. Angelia, go ahead. And folks, you can just line up for asking questions by typing exclamation mark in the chat. Angelia, go ahead. She asks, in relationships, how do you define yourself to someone?
This is the real challenge of sort of navigating your personal brand. It's not so easy to summarize yourself in a few sentences. And it can also be very intimidating and scary to sort of reveal all your variety and uniqueness and facets of your personhood when maybe you've never even met someone with that exact combination. So it can feel like a risk to open up and share all of your personhood with someone. And when you're dating, that makes it even more difficult because you're already sort of vulnerable, putting yourself out there on a date with maybe someone you don't know. And it's it's a unique challenge to be dating as a polymath. I would say it makes dating harder. And that's what I heard from the people I interviewed. One other thing I'll say when it comes to romantic relationships, the majority of the people I interviewed did not have children. They may have been in relationship, but it's not easy to have children and juggle like a polymath usually does. And by the way, I want to say you could be a polymath who focuses on A for 5 years and then moves to B for 10 years and then combines A and B to make something else. It doesn't have to be all at the same time. It can be back to back, the way you pursue your polymathy. But most polymaths I know juggle. They spin multiple plates at the same time. And so if that's how you are, sometimes when you have a kid, it means your polymathy may suffer because you're in child rearing mode, or it makes it more difficult, or it slows it down. So that's another aspect of sort of romantic relationships and the children that may come to fruition as a result, is that that also presents its own unique challenges.
Right. Next up is Alex, Martin, Jean, and Nicole. Alex, go ahead.
By the way, Saskia and Gianni, if you have any replies to any of these questions, please just jump in.
I guess my question is, does a morning routine or a routine in general greatly affect one's polymathy?
Routine. It depends on the person. Some polymaths are real organized and structured, and that's how they get accomplished, is because they're so good at sort of being structured. They can make things happen through being highly organized and managing their schedule and having routine. Other polymaths are just more go with the flow types. But what became clear is that time management is a real issue for polymaths. Sleep. I didn't think sleep was going to come up in my interviews, but sleep comes up because it takes up a third of your day. And some polymaths function very well with very little sleep, and they sacrifice sleep because they're so curious and so busy and so interested in other things that that's what they want to spend their time on. And other polymaths are like, no, if I want to perform at a high level, I need my 8 hours of sleep a night. So what I know for sure is that time management, whether it's routine or more go with the flow, is a real challenge polymaths have to navigate because their minds are just so hungry. Their minds are so hungry. One of the people I interviewed, by the way, I think this is funny. She told me that if she were to go on vacation and sit on the beach and do nothing, how stressful that would be. Like doing nothing and just relaxing is kind of unpleasant and unnatural for some, not all, but for some polymaths, that's very, very strange. So I want to put that out there as well, as long as we're talking about how you spend your time.
Excellent.
May I just add some short thing? I mix both. I have a morning routine, but it's a very, very strange routine. The first hour, I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to hear anybody. And I give my mind the opportunity to wander around and to do the things I get the impression on that moment. Having a meeting in the morning is for me real hell, because then I have to shift it or skip it, and so it's wandering time.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to chime in too. I have to agree that like with what you were saying about the time management things, I have like it's a myriad of things that I just feel like of human existence and human like life and tediousness of things that I feel is just like a burden because they get in the way of that whole aspect of those things. It's so funny. Like I literally wish I didn't have to sleep. I literally wish that was not a necessity of life. I literally wish I didn't even have to eat. Honestly, I love tasting food. I love the taste of food. I love eating, but like the necessity of having to sit down and make a meal and cook it and do all the rest of the stuff. Oh man, absolutely. And this is a lot of things that I would say are just like I say, just tediousness of human life experience that get in the way of learning. But like I say, again, I had to like kind of train and learn myself that like I have to take care of not only the human that is here, you know, because it is what I'm able to do everything through and what I am able to perceive everything as this being and as this entity. So I have to take care of it anyways, and I have to take care of those things and do those things anyways. So I accept them, but I absolutely feel like they're such a hindrance.
Yeah, absolutely. For someone who's passionate about learning, it can feel like such a drag to have to do something like laundry or dishes, like, but you need to do that to, exist and be clean and all of that good stuff. A few other things that I just thought of too that I'll add is that although a lot of polymaths can feel uncomfortable if they're not doing something, if they're not learning or being productive or absorbing information or creating something, there is some value. There's some evidence that by clearing your mind, by creating space, by not doing anything, it sort of opens up your mind to explore and get to create linkages and to be creative and innovative, which is a kind of a superpower, by the way, of polymaths. Polymaths, because they have this broad toolkit of experiences, their superpower is building the bridge between disciplines, like Saskia said, seeing the bigger picture, synthesizing information, innovating, being creative. That's the power of polymath. And if you're always busy doing something, it might be difficult. So there is some value in sort of slowing down and just letting your mind wander where it will to see what comes up and what your mind does. I will say too, something that came up with some of my interviews was that polymaths tend to be better at switching because there's so much going on. They're so used to switching from this to that, over here, over there. They tend, I would guess, I don't have evidence for this. I just have sort of, their stories. I don't have data, but I would say polymaths probably on average tend to be better at switching tasks mentally or physically than people who are narrow specialists who just are not used to switching in that way. And someone else said in the comments, it's not just managing time, it's also managing energy. So that's something else, like something I do. And I, here's a tip and a trick for you guys, is when I've got things I need to get done, I sort of check in, like, what do I feel like I have energy to do? What am I passionate? What do I want to lean in today? And if I have some leeway in terms of timing of when I do certain tasks, just sort of tuning in and finding out, what do I feel like doing today? Because I may have a menu of 10 things I need to do, and just sort of self-managing my energy and my passion at that particular moment for what I want to tackle on any given day. So those are a few other things that came up for me.
Another thing what you can do is that now I forget what I wanted to tell you. Never mind. If I come back, I'll come add it later on. I forgot it.
Got it.
All right, let's go to the next question. It's from Martin.
Hi, everybody. I want to know if someone knows something about polymathy be linked with imposter syndrome, and if you have something to tell about that. And also, that reminds me about the beach thing that you said before. It was very funny for me because I want to leave to the beach. And I said, what I'm gonna do? I don't have any TVs, cell phone, internet, nothing, no one. What I'm gonna do? But then when I realized that I spent time in nature, and I realized that when the nature do work in yourself, start to work in yourself, then another things happen, and you start to not needing nothing else, and you can learn in a different way. That is very spectacular what happened when you go to nature and leave nature make the job in you.
Right. I will say, regarding Martin, your question about imposter syndrome, when I was developing my interview protocols for my research, it never occurred to me to ask anything about imposter syndrome. And I think almost in half of the interviews I conducted, the interviewees brought up imposter syndrome. They brought it up. It is a phenomenon that polymaths feel, because when you live in an age of specialization, when you look around at your peers and you see all these people developing deep expertise in one area alone, and then you compare yourself to that, you may feel inferior in that area. And maybe you actually are in that one area. The thing is, from my perspective, I just feel like there's no need to feel inferior. There's no need to feel imposter syndrome. You're just different. They're a specialist, you're a polymath. You have a broader array. You have something they don't have. Maybe they should feel imposter syndrome because they don't have breadth. They only have depth. Polymaths tend to have breadth and depth. Maybe not quite as deep as the specialists, but they have both. And there's great value in that. So I just want to say, yes, imposter syndrome is a thing for polymaths. But my hope is that it's not too heavy a burden on them, because personally, I just feel like they bring a different talent to the table, which is also valuable. We need a society with both specialists and polymathic generalists. We need both approaches. And actually, I think if we can harness the talents of both together, that's really what's going to push humanity forward even better to the next level.
Saskia and Gianni, whenever you want to comment on something, just unmute yourself. So as soon as I notice it, I'll wait for you, okay? Next up is Jean, Nicole, and Francoise. Jean, go ahead. Jean, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, you were breaking up. I didn't hear. Yeah, it's thank you. It's very interesting. Every time I join this lecture, I just identify more and more with what they're describing. It's so funny because I used to change my job every 2-3 years, and that I interview with the company, and they are concerned about my resume. Why you change job every 2-3 years? And I have to explain to them. I said, you learn all the things you need to learn in 2-3 years. Then it get boring, and I learned so much through different jobs. And at the same time, I realized loyalty is very important to the company. It's like dating. Now I'm ready to settle down. It's so funny. But anyway, now I work for myself. I haven't changed job for more than 6 years, which is the longest. So my question is, sharing is, I think, having kids for Polymath is the best thing you can ever have, because through my kids, I learned so much. Like now I learn nutritionist, I learn education, psychology, all this because of the challenge facing through kids. So I encourage every Polymath to have more kids, have more Polymath kids in the world to make the world more interesting. Another interesting thing is I read the book, Linchpin. I think it's exactly what Polymath people are. We are the linchpin, the key person to make the things happening. So the linchpin can connect all the specialists, and we have big pictures, and with the leadership, we can do important things. Another thing I believe, Elon Musk, I think he is Polymath for sure. He have done multiple different things in very deep depths and make huge change for people cannot doing in their lifetime. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jing, for sharing that. I think Elon Musk absolutely is a polymath. Thank you for sharing the book Linchpin. I want to say, Jing, too, you mentioned you're an entrepreneur, you work for yourself. I haven't mentioned that yet in this discussion, but but one of the challenges of being polymathic is that organizations usually discriminate against polymathic types. So many choose to become entrepreneurs so they can use their full talents and sort of find a place where they fit in, maybe even combine their interests into a unique job. But being an entrepreneur has risk, right? Like there are no guarantees when you work for yourself. And so that's another emotional reality, is if you're a polymath who has become an entrepreneur, like that can be a stressful situation. It can also be wonderful and enriching and rewarding and joyful too. And then lastly, regarding kids, yeah, that is, so often when we talk about polymathy, we think about intellectual knowledge, but the experience aspect, having broad experiences matters too. And absolutely being a parent to a human being, like creating or adopting a human being and helping raise them is a wonderful and enriching experience. Maybe one of the most, in my view. I'm a mother, I have a 4-year-old daughter. I feel like despite how ambitious I have been, getting motherhood right, being a good mom is the most important job I will ever do. And I learned so much about myself through that process. So absolutely.
I just want to add something. If you are a polymath who has a job in an organization, be aware that if your boss changes, that might be a tricky thing for you, because it is much based on relationship, whether you get sufficient exciting things to do, sufficient challenges. If your boss knows you, then you get them automatically. But if that person changes and there's coming something new, somebody new who doesn't know you, you have to build that trust again, because they are afraid of such a polymathic resume, or a person who knows so much, can do so much, and doesn't fit in one box.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is going to be Nicole, Francoise, and Stephen. Nicole, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I haven't been here before, but thanks for inviting me in. Of course, it all sounds familiar. I've done the entrepreneurial thing as well, and it does come with risks, yeah. But sometimes it seems the only way to ever do what I need to do. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if anybody has researched potential genetic links. Like, one of the things that comes to my mind is that, and it makes sense, the genetic link makes sense in my family, about the ability to process dopamine efficiently in the frontal lobe. We don't do it very well. It can lead to some emotional instabilities. But at the same time, we're all very high IQ folks. My sister and I turned out very similar in this regard. So I was wondering if anybody had looked at genetic links, potential neurobiological factors, or do you think it is, in your research, Angela, have you found it just mostly a social adaptation that you referred to?
Yes, this is a great question. So one thing I should let you know is that polymathy as a phenomenon has been studied very little in general. So there may be studies about like IQ and genetic factors, or like brain structures and IQ or giftedness, like that stuff exists, but it's not specific to polymathy and sort of the wide variety of learning that polymaths do. So there's very little research. I found a study about like the right temporal gyrus or something in the brain, how maybe that may be linked with openness to experience and creativity, which are associated with polymathy, but the study was not on polymaths in that way. I tend to believe, yeah, absolutely, our brain structure. I'm sure if it was if polymaths' brains were studied, and by the way, I'm not a neuroscientist and I'm really ignorant about a lot of this stuff, so it's not my forte. But I'm guessing for experts who might study the brains of polymaths in the future, there may be something different when compared to people who have lived their lives as neurospecialists. I have no doubt that there would be physical differences, genetic differences. One other thing I'll mention, I did ask every person I interviewed if they thought their polymathy was due more to nature or nurture. Now, what they think is not evidence, but they're the experts of their own lives, if anyone is. And so it was interesting to hear what they said. And almost all of them felt like it was both. Like there had to be some nurture. There had to be some basic, level of capability built into their physical anatomy for them to be good at learning, about lots of different things. So the nature had to be there, but so did the nurture. But the way the nurture showed up was not the same for everybody. Some people had difficulty that led to polymathy. Some people had supportive, wonderful resources that led to polymathy. Great parents, difficult parents, lots of financial resources, little financial resources. So the way they did it, or the way that polymaths came to be, was not a consistent story. What was consistent is that family life early on and finances did play an important role, but the exact role, positive or negative, I feel like I'm not saying this very well. Supportive parents, not supportive parents, lots of money, little money, both options could lead to someone becoming polymathic and help them. Even if something appeared difficult, it might have helped them become polymathic, because if I don't have money, I can't outsource fixing my car, so I have to figure it out myself. Or I had a difficult childhood and I really need to tick it out. Or maybe I even just need a mental escape now, so I read a lot of books. And then by reading a lot of books, I become more knowledgeable about a variety of subjects. So it's nature and nurture both, in my opinion, and also in the opinion of most of the actual polymaths I interviewed.
Gianni?
I just want to say my biological father is definitely a polymath. I didn't know him for 31 years of my life and stuff. But yeah, we started talking and we started meeting, and it's like all the same kind of thing. So for me, if you ask whether or not it was nature or nurture, I know for a fact at least some part of it was definitely nature for me. So and the nurture, yeah, absolutely. But I think, like you were saying, I think more of the fact that is the situation, the polymath became not the they became themselves because of the situation. It's not the other way around. The situation created them. But that's what would be what I would guess. So, but I don't know.
Folks, we are running a little short on time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one last question from Francoise, and I'm going to give Stefan and Leslie the first dibs on giving their takeaways after the breakout rooms. So Francoise, go ahead.
Okay, so Angela, thank you so much for sharing and explaining so many different situations. I learned a lot, and I'm still into the inquiry of knowing yourself helps you to know others. And I'm wondering if in your studies and all interviews, you met the situation where polymaths were such because of dyslexia.
Dyslexia. Dyslexia did not come up with any of my research participants. attention deficit hyperactivity disorder did come up with a number of them. And actually, by the way, as it pertains, people contact me regarding my research. And one of the people who contacted me recently had done research at Stanford about ADHD. We had a few meetings, and he was trying to distinguish what's the difference between someone with polymathy and someone with ADHD. And he kept saying, the more I described polymath, the more he's like, you're describing me with ADHD. So ADHD is something that came up. Dyslexia didn't. It doesn't mean there's no link. It doesn't mean some polymaths don't have it. I don't have data on dyslexia in particular. Saskia, did you have something to add?
Go ahead.
I see a lot of people with dyslexia also. And if you see to the kenmerken, the criteria they give to ADHD, ADD, and dyslexia, and some others like giftedness is also linked in some way or another. And then I see a lot of people with dyslexia, and some have really severe dyslexia.
All right.
Thank you, Saskia. So on that note, what we're going to do is that we're going to go to breakout rooms. Breakout rooms is an integral part of these meetups because there you'll be able to talk to each other about all the things that we've been discussing. And then we'll come back automatically in 20 minutes and we will discuss our takeaways. All right, I'm starting.
Guys, Shrikant, real quick, before you guys go, can I give you like some thought questions to think about when you're in there?
Oh, yes. Forgot about that. Go ahead.
So we live in an age of specialization. I'm guessing for people here, you're probably identifying with being a polymath, or you're at least curious or open to it. And I'd like for you each to share, like, do you feel that pressure to specialize? And what have you chosen for how you live life and how you work professionally? Did you choose specialization or multiple specializations, or have you chosen a more polymathic approach to work and life, and your hobbies? And more largely, just what has resonated with you as we've discussed these social and emotional challenges. So just share a little bit about your own story and your own path and what's resonated with you today or not, if you feel comfortable sharing your experiences.
Wonderful. I'm starting the breakout rooms now. See you back in 20 minutes. Welcome back. All right, it's time for takeaways. So I'm going to give, so what we are doing is that you can talk about your takeaways. What are you walking away with from this meetup? And you can also ask a question, the most important question. Try to be brief. And what we'll do is that at the end, if you have time, we will have a discussion. So I want to have anybody who wants to give their takeaways get a chance to say their piece first, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to start with Stephen and Leslie first. Stephen, Leslie, and Barry. Stephen, go ahead. If you want to skip, you can just type skip. You can just unmute yourself and ask give your takeaways. Okay, Stephen, are you there?
Right.
Go ahead.
So yeah. So let me pull up my. So the question I was asking was, this came up in other conversations, but here's a proposition that I would make: is that confident people should be widely propagating intellectual and economic prosperity.
All right, we'll keep that. All the questions we will deal with at the end. What was your takeaway from the meetup?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I have a bunch of little ones. It's good to find a group of people who have this point of view and this kind of experience. And I've got a few links of interesting things to read and follow up on. And I guess it's good to hear people coming at this from different directions. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I just want to tell everybody about 70% of you, 75% of you are regulars every day. So these are all polymath people who keep coming every day. We cover a whole range of topics on psychology, philosophy, self-improvement, science, art. But any topic that we are looking at, we're looking at it from the polymathic perspective. So each person brings in a different perspective and we have a conversation on the topic with that. So that's what we do every day, 9 p.m. Eastern time and 12:30 p.m. Eastern time and 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on weekends. So 9 p.m. On the weekdays and then weekends. Next up is Leslie, Barry, and Jeff. Leslie.
Thanks. I've really enjoyed this session because it just felt like I fit in. like the descriptions in the conversation fit with my experience or my view of myself. When people think they have me figured out, it probably means they have no clue. And when people acknowledge that they can't quite make sense of who I am, they're the ones who probably have a closer understanding of who I am. But the favorite compliment an ex-boyfriend gave me, he said, "I'm the most interesting person he's ever known." And I love that, and I cherish that compliment. But thank you for making me feel like I fit in for these 2 hours. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Nice to have you here. Next up is Barry, Jeff, and Derek. Barry?
Yes. Well, my major takeaway is from the poem I just read to the breakout group. And that poem says, "My fruit were the grapes of math that became the grapes of wrath. Because I'm an empath, I choose the vine to wine path who has the grapes of a polymath." And so what I mean by that is many times I join a group and it's draining. And I become, because I absorb other people's emotions and I come away trying to solve their emotions but I'm just, my takeaway is that I become away excited that I am a polymath. It's supporting, it's helping rather than hurting me. So I find as I become more polymathic and more empathic as I get older, that I am more even sensitive to other people's emotions. And so finding a group that is emotionally supportive is really critical to me.
Thank you, Barry. Always appreciate your stories and especially your poems. Thank you. Next up is Jeff, Derek, and Alice.
So I want to thank Gianni for the really excellent questions that he raised in our breakout. And among them was a question about the relationship between polymathy and intelligence. And my sense of that relationship, and something that I hear you all, if I'm hearing you correctly, kind of remark on and really celebrate, is that polymathy is the mashup of many different kinds of intelligence, that from the intellectual to the emotional to the ability to not just address kind of facts, be they simple or very complex or interrelated, but then even beyond that, invention, when things are truly complex and the answers are not known. And then on top of that, where there is chaos. And not only do we not really know the answer, but everything's changing. And the not only willingness, but really just attraction to those kinds of questions and issues is something that I find unusual in the world. And I know that I make people crazy by constantly raising them all the time. And so I think I see that you all, I think I find you as kindred spirits in appreciation as well as attraction to that kind of complexity and change. And I appreciate that. And Angela, I appreciate all your work in this. And Gianni, I want to tell you how much I love that question.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Derek, Karen, and Nicole. Derek?
So I think that my takeaway from this, I think one of the major themes that we have here is that we live in a world where people are expected to fit in to some specific place, or even as children we're expected to fit in the way that we respond in our humor and in our emotions and in what we're motivated by and in what gives a response, what evokes a response from us. And that for a lot of people who I think there's this innate restlessness to being a polymath that is what drives us to try to master multiple fields and also to delve so deeply into them. And I think that in a lot of cases, I've heard from a lot of people here that they have a sense of alienation from normal people because of this restlessness, because of this difference. And I think, though, that in a lot of cases, unless you manage to get in the right environment where you just thrive as such, that a lot of us end up running into some sort of life crisis that allows us to relate to normal people in a way that maybe we didn't before and recognize the struggles of normal people. And I think that that's what it did for me. And it's been interesting to hear some of the stories from other people where they too found themselves laughing at different things from their classmates, not fitting in whenever people are trying to get them to pick a career, all these sorts of issues. That it's the struggle to fit in. That's the major takeaway that I think I'm going to look into further when I come away from this.
Excellent. I'm going to jump and I'm going to give my takeaway because it is connected to this. I actually feel very differently. I see that children are naturally curious and have no boundaries of disciplines. And they just try to learn and do everything that they can. So I think human beings are like that. So for me, polymath is not an unusual thing. Polymath is just human. And for some reason, over the last 300 years, people have created this concept of disciplines and that you're supposed to have boundaries, which is I consider highly artificial. So for me, I'm just being human. And so I see, and actually being human, I'm able to connect to human beings actually better than others because all the other people are kind of in their own silos and they say, oh, that person is in the other silo. So I don't need to talk to him. Now, the problem is that they are actually not connecting to each other. Whereas I find it's the most natural thing to talk to people at wherever they are and whatever they can do. And the more, so it's kind of like, playing with other people, so it's like kids playing with other kids. What can you play? And it just opens. So I don't see this. And for example, I don't see, like, for example, this entire forum is all about that. People come from everywhere. Most of them are polymaths. Some of them are not. And we meet people wherever they are. And everybody kind of takes maybe a little bit more, they become a little bit more open to moving across the boundaries that they have artificially put in their own minds because that is what is commonly held. So I see no alienation. I see that you are actually connecting deeply to another human being and connecting deeply to yourself. So that's my takeaway. Next up is Karen, Nicole, and Eric. Karen?
Hi, thanks ever so much for this group and to Angela for her research because, I'm sat here, I was almost overwhelmed at the start. I was nearly in tears because I just felt, my God, she's describing me, and I spent my whole life feeling like I have to play a bit small so that other people don't feel intimidated by me, or doing that because I can see they are intimidated by me. So, if I want to have social connections, I need to just sort of somehow keep myself in check or downplay some of my many interests, talents, gifts, etc., etc. So it's just overwhelmingly amazing to find that a group of people like this, because it's so unusual to find other polymaths. I think so to find a group where I can actually just say who I am and be myself and understand, this is a thing, this is a real thing, and it's okay. It's okay to be a breadth person rather than a depth person. I can't tell you the relief I'm feeling from having been part of this group today. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Karen. That really means a lot to me as someone who's researched this to feel like it's helping people and making a difference. So thank you.
I'll wait to read your thesis actually. So thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks, Karen. Next up is Nicole, Eric, and Jean. Nicole?
It's good to connect. It's rare that we will find each other in the real world and we have to go and seek each other. I like watching, you know, I do like hearing people talk about the positive aspects. You know, Gianni, man, your smile is just awesome. Oh, good Lord. You're just full of optimism, and I can be like that sometime, but today I'm not. I'm more cynical. I just have just this little cynical period I'm in. But it's nice, nice watching. It's like, I remember that optimism. Yeah. It's good to see other people, you know, like yourself, Karen, who just enjoyed coming into the, you know, company. You know, I was lucky I had a couple kids in high school, one in particular who was like that. Not many, you know, but yeah, I guess the takeaway is it's just good to see other people who are responding positively to the connection.
Thank you, Nicole. Next up is Eric, Jean, and Francoise. Eric? Eric, are you there? Okay, Jean is next.
Yeah, I totally agree with Shirkan. I think it's a natural way of being, and I feel that all the time. And I'm reading. I think I'm reading this book. I was want to ask a question. The reason we be polymath, that because we are strong-willed, so we are not compliant to be specialized to fit in. That's so we maintain our natural way of being. Or is, you know, I wonder if that's the case. And I'm reading this book called Living an Examined Life, second half of your life. And it's talking about how to be your authentic self. I think it's important to accepting yourself. We're all different, how this world works. We need specialized person and we need polymath people to connect them. That's how we can work beautifully together. Unfortunately, we don't need a lot of connectors. So we're not too many in this world, spread out. So it's good, Shirkan create a space to help us to meet each other. And Angela too, you know, I joined your Facebook group. I love the comments, really fascinating. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jean. Eric, you're back. Go ahead.
I'm not sure I actually have a ton to add to that. I think those were two pretty decent summaries.
No, we're not trying to do summaries. We're trying to say, what are you walking away from this meetup with? What is your takeaway?
I think it's interesting that many people here seem like they were more traumatized by being a polymath than I was, or, I mean, I don't know, I've probably got a boatload of trauma, so that's not really accurate. I think maybe I was traumatized in a very different way by it, might be a little more accurate. So I don't know, I'll probably be thinking about that a lot. I mean, I just kind of assume that everybody has a screwed up life, and my life was screwed up in kind of different ways than most people's. And yeah, I don't know, a lot to think about in those regards.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Next up is Francoise, Alex, and Deborah.
So it's amazing because there were so many things which fit, you know, but at the same time, some others are very conflicting. So there must be so many different type of polymath. And for instance, for me, I can't very much, I can't find the word, and that's so often, you know, to do two things at the same time. Even though there's many things which change all the time, to do and put attention on several things at the same time is very difficult. So I guess there's so many different ways to be a polymath that you know, you don't really know where you fit and where you belong.
Thank you. Thank you, Francoise. Next up is Deborah. Deborah, go ahead.
Hello. Okay, so I'll try to make it short. I really like this. And I would say that it's definitely a positive thing. I would say inarguably positive. Why? Because there are so many opportunities in the world today. It's unbelievable. And if you're a polymathic sort of person, you can dive into so many different things. Also, we can fit into so many different settings. I've been to 44 countries, and I feel like I belong in every single one. So you can be like a chameleon, and it's not being fake. It's bringing out a different aspect of yourself. And also, I wouldn't want to be limited by hanging out with one group of people. I've never, ever done that. And it's really exciting to hang out with different groups of people at different times. So I would argue it's just fitting in. And then I would advise people to try to find a career that allows you to try different things, use your diverse interest, enjoy connecting with diverse people. And for me, I'm fortunate because being a teacher, I get to use every single tiny thing I've ever learned in my entire life in my career. So I'm very fortunate. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Deborah. And I'm glad that you spend as much time with us as you do. You always add.
I'm actually working at the same time right now. I've got conferences next week. But I'm listening, multitasking. Thank you.
Next up is Kevin, Joel, and Martin. Kevin? Okay, next up is Joel, Martin, and Mike. Joel?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, just because today I did something. Sorry, just listen to awesome talk presenter and you guys talking. My takeaway is like that. Obviously, everybody has polymath skills and personality. For example, the job by job, that's transfer skills. The simple words I look for a job. That's and also other thing. Like we use only one brain. We do different things. From dating, sleeping, then going to breakfast, cooking, working, work with kids, play with kids. That's a different skill set. That's my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Martin, Mike, and Julie. Martin, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, my takeaway of this is that I have a takeaway. And for these days, to have a takeaway, it's a lot for me. This conversation reminds me what a phrase that a professor that I had told me that is you shouldn't take everything like the way it is, the way it should be. I mean, and it's something that allows me to try to understand that if you don't fit in, maybe it's okay. I mean, maybe you should try a different way, and then when you realize that in a different way that you try and you can accomplish what you want, and that encourage you to do more and more and more, and to understand what everyone tell you that it's impossible, or let's say that it's very difficult, you can do it. And that is a very interesting thing to get energy of that. And also I always, when I think about polymathy or generalistic things or something like that, is as Srikant said, I feel more that is more natural, that is that not, I mean, it's more natural to be the way to learn different things and have different skills. Because I think what happened with a guy who was born like, I don't know, 3,000 years ago, and what happened, I mean, he or she should have a lot of skills to adapt to the environment that they don't even know how they can call. I don't know, they don't even know what is fear. They don't have a word for that, and they should adapt as much as they can to, and that people bring us here. And that is, I think we are in the backwards now. And also I think another thing that I think it's, imagine what we send outside Earth, an astronaut. And an astronaut should have a lot of different skills, like emotional skills, like technical skills, and adaptation skills, a lot of skills. We need to know or to research more about what is an astronaut and what should be or should have, because we are sending someone outside the environment that we know, totally unknown, and that is the person that we are sending. And I think we need to understand much more about aerospace things and astronaut things, and well, that is what I want to share.
Thank you, Martin. Next up is Mike Magic, Julie, and Michael Cillian. Mike Magic.
I guess everybody in this audience has been a polymath except me. The few skills I've been able to develop seem to
Mike,
all
I
have a
don't believe that
commonality.
for a moment. I don't believe that for a moment. No matter what topic we've been talking about over these past 3 months, you've been able to give the history of that topic. I've had to keep your comments short because you know so much. So I don't believe
there's a commonality. There's a commonality to the relatively few patterns, and maybe that commonality is partial differential equations. Everything from organizational dynamics to Jungian psychology to economics is nonlinear, multi-dimensional, combinatorial, partial differential equations. And I've only solved a few special cases in that. It seems to work well where I've been able to apply it. I didn't tell you about any of the failures. So, but this has generated a lot of interest, and that's why I keep coming back.
Wonderful, Mike. Thank you very much. Always an honor to have you here. Next up is Julie, Michael, and Marco. Julie, go ahead.
Hi. I think there's a power around anybody who's honoring and whose life reflects their own uniqueness, and it's powerful. And usually it's bigger than any fear. So it tends to bring out and inspire other people to come from their light. And their work is infused with love or something when they're doing their passion. Whether or not we're all natural polymaths, I don't know. Some of the people that are specialists and they are authentic may have stopped there because they might have bought into some limiting belief about you can't do it all. So I think that you guys are very powerful in the example you set for other people that we are limitless. And if you see one person do it, it makes you see, it gives you permission and lets you, it's just a beautiful, beautiful, powerful thing. And I think if we had more people honoring themselves, we would live in a world where people create synergy and celebrate their differences rather than feeling so threatened by them and causing wars over them. So beautiful. Right on. Thanks.
Beautifully put, Julie. Next up is Michael Cillian, Marco, and B. Michael?
Yeah, so like just continue doing what we do, talking about this conversation. I'm part of like at least 6 different networks and groups that are talking about this question, specializing.
Excellent, wonderful.
Yeah.
Next up is Marco, B, and B. Marco?
Yeah, definitely to embrace your multifacetedness and sort of like you can access any part of it when needed, and definitely that the opportunities and possibilities are endless.
Thank you, Marco. B? Okay, so now we're going to get the takeaways from Gianni, Saskia, and Angela. Gianni, what's your takeaway from the meetup?
My takeaway is happy to know that I'm not alone and that it's a bunch of people having some of the same similar experiences I am too. And I got 1,000,001 subjects I want to talk to all of y'all about all the time. And you're probably gonna catch me in the Facebook group chatting it up about a bunch of different things.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
And I'll be back here too. But yeah, and just yeah, that's pretty much
Wonderful. Look forward to seeing your smile, you and your smile back. All right. Saskia.
Well, for me, the inspiration and the different stories, certainly the stories in the small group. Thank you guys to be so open. And that is really giving me also some energy. And just like Jenny, I listened to the previous one, but I think I will be back as well.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Angela.
Well, I just want to thank Gianni and Saskia for joining today and for being the special guests. I appreciate you guys showing up and sharing your stories and your observations. I also want to give a special shout out to Alex because he was in our breakout group. He's only 16 and he showed up here. Most of us I can see are much older than 16. So I just think it's really cool that we had a teenager show up today. Some takeaways, you know, there were some.
Hey, watch it with that much older talk.
Well, I do wish part of what I hope for Polymathy is for it to become more discussed and for there to be discourse around it starting at a young age. And so, Alex being here sort of gives me hope that okay, at least one young person out there cares about this and showed up. Maybe other young people in the future will care about this as well. In the breakout room, Barry shared a couple things. Barry, I want to give you a shout out as well. He made some really good points that relate to polymathy and the emotional social realities of living life in that way. And he said that his polymathy, his multifacetedness, his ability to do painting and piano and yoga and all the things that Barry does, it's actually part of his healing. So when he's had some trauma, his wife dying, it's like actually his polymathy helped heal him in a way. And I neglected to make that point earlier. So polymathy and having a wide variety of healing modalities at your fingertips that you're comfortable using can actually be healing. He also pointed out that he treats himself as a system to become whole and well, is what he said. He also said he believes his polymathy makes him healthier. So those were some interesting points I didn't bring up that Barry did. And I just want to, I think those are some takeaways for me. Next time I talk about this topic, I'm going to make sure to make those points. Also, my final takeaway is every time I do this, I'm so glad to see that people care about this, that it resonates. It gives me a sense of relief when someone like Karen says she was on the verge of tears. There have been so many times people contact me from all over the world and have told me comments like that like they don't feel alone anymore and that this information brought them to tears or almost brought them to tears. So I just want to encourage everybody to talk about this. Some of the social emotional realities may make it easy to let this stay in the shadows because it's not necessarily something that we talk about in polite company all that often. It's not something we always bring up. But we should, because it's a natural, wonderful way of being a human being. So that's my final thought, is just to encourage you all to take polymathy out of the shadows and talk about it more, live it more.
Wonderful. Let's end by talking about what's coming up. So Angela, can you tell about what's your next meetup? And then I'll tell you about 3 other Polymath meetups coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk number 3 will be 2 weeks from today. That's November 29th from 2:30 to 4:30 Eastern time. And we're going to be talking about the ethos of a modern day polymath. So what do the personality of polymaths tend to be like? And what kind of values do they tend to hold as they express their multidisciplinary interests and different expertise in a world that rewards specialization? So today we talked about emotions and social aspects. Next week's going to be more about values and personality. Not next week, sorry, 2 weeks from today. So I hope you all can join for that session as well.
All right. So there are 3 more presentations coming up on Wednesdays. So we do like Polymath Wednesdays. We call it Comprehensivist Wednesdays or Polymath Wednesdays or Transdisciplinary Wednesdays. And we have a range of people talking about a range of topics. So coming Wednesday, my friend CJ, who heads the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, is going to be talking about the value of ethnosphere. So what can you learn from other cultures? How do you kind of incorporate all the lessons from all the cultures into your thinking? So that's coming up this Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, we are going to be looking at the book Range by David Epstein. The Wednesday after that, Dustin Miller is going to be back, and he's going to be talking about his experience interviewing the top dozen polymaths that he has interviewed. I think he has interviewed like 70 people. So he's going to we have picked 12 of those interviews, and we are going to talk about what lessons did he learn from each of them. One idea from each of the polymaths that you can take away with. So that's what is coming up. So folks, thank you very much for being here. Special thanks for Gianni and Saskia, and of course, Angela. This is a delightful series, and we'll see you very soon. All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.